Welcome to the People First podcast. I'm here with Jagdeep Singh, who is the Head of Technology Strategy and Transformation and also the CTO at BlueScope Steel. Now, Jagdeep, thank you for joining us today on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Maddie. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. And look, Jagdeep, your journey from civil engineer to head of technology strategy and transformation, as I said, at BlueScope Steel, is really fascinating. And I want to hear a little bit more about this area. Can you share a moment or experience that truly solidified your passion for technology and set you on this career path?
Yeah, thanks, Maddie. I wish I can say it was one event or one particular moment. I think as is with our lives, it's a series of events that shape you. So in my case, the series of events started perhaps one as an accident in the sense that I said, okay, I would be a civil engineer. And reflecting back, I'm not sure why I wanted to be one, but I just wanted to be a civil engineer at that point of time. I did my civil engineering in India. So coming out of it, you are joined by 30,000 other civil engineers in that year. And then suddenly the reality of the world hits you, right? So what do? I was looking at higher education, computers and technology was always of interest. So I thought, let me change tact. Option was to come to Australia or to go to US in terms of higher education. Australia was cheaper and quicker. So that's where the series of events comes in, right? So
and what did you know about Australia at the time?
I didn't know. I mean, I knew a lot, and obviously there's shared heritage in terms of Commonwealth countries. Cricket obviously is a very common, relatable theme. Very aware of Australia and its history, but obviously from a far, far away position. So I landed in Australia when I was 21. It's the dawn of the new century, year 2000, February 16th. I landed to do my master's at RMIT, and they gave me a conditional admission because they were not sure either that as a civil engineer I would be able to kind of transition into master's, right? So anyway, that happened. So that was the next series of events, and then you come out again as a master's level graduate, but still with no experience in a new country, trying to adapt to a new lifestyle. You're probably too young to remember, but 2000 was also a time when IT bust happened. So we will be doing masters, and every day there's a story around, ANZ is laying off 100 people, Telstra's laying off 1,000. And so nobody wanted to actually look at graduates either.
It's a very daunting time, I imagine.
That's right. And then if you are life of an international student, if you're not a permanent resident, then again, nobody wants to look at you, right? So you have a paper qualifications, but the transferability of those because of series of factors is not easy, right? So then it is find anything, right? You need a job to survive, and obviously coming in as an international immigrant, there's a backstory in terms of family's investment in you. So you are going, and this is at an age of 22 and 23. You're going through all that. So I was eventually lucky to find a technology sales position at a business called Harris Technology in Melbourne. It was acquired by Officeworks. And then I transitioned into Officeworks technology sales team. And series of events again, anything that came my way, so it's accept all offers.
You were a yes man.
I was a yes man, right? So I did anything. So eventually I was even a store manager for Officeworks stores.
Wow.
I opened Officeworks Airport West in Melbourne. And then again, slowly my interest in technology, my skills in technology started to kind of adapt, that the business technology intersection started to become a lot more clear. And then I learned, I was again in everywhere. I was in finance, I was in merchandising, I was in marketing, loss and risk, new product development. business improvement, you name it, within Officeworks, any opportunity that came in my way, I accepted and slowly started to transition more towards the technology space because those skills of project management, large scale change, and that's savvy around business and technology started to gel. And then eventually I transitioned purely into technology, and my last position with Wesfarmers was around as a medium-sized head of technology, Wesfarmers self-insurance space. And then to your question, right, how do I land it in technology? I think I landed in technology in a very kind of series of events. And then once you get to that point, after all that hard kind of yards, then it's the validation. It's people give you that feedback and validation, and you see that success and natural alignment. And I guess maybe we can say that's an accidental way to find what you're good at. But that's how
really is a bit like a domino effect, though, isn't it? That
absolutely.
that one role that you had led to the next role.
Absolutely.
And all of the roles you previously had, I'm sure, have led to where you are today, but also the knowledge.
100%. Yeah. And I do remember early in the Officeworks times, there were times when you're wondering, I've got a master's degree, what am I doing? And now that I reflect back, it's those skills in terms of understanding the customer, understanding the way business is done. I tell my daughter now that perhaps the best role for anyone to do if you want to learn business is be the store manager of a big box store, right? If you're a store manager of Bunnings or Coles or Kmart or Officeworks, you do everything.
Yes.
All the
you wear all the hats.
You wear all the hats, right? There isn't one angle of business that you don't learn. And you don't know how those skills will be transferable in any future roles that you take.
And I think by wearing all those hats, do you think that's led you to the leader you are today as well?
Absolutely. And at a very core level, it's that relationships, that ability to relate, that ability to build long-term connections, so not transactional. And that's, again, my life learnings and principles is you cannot achieve long-term success if your relationships are very transactional. If you're only going to talk to your colleague because something needs to be done, that's very transactional. If you haven't had the coffees, if you haven't had those long-term relationship building connections, then it becomes hard. So I think that would be a key of it. And then with that, obviously, you're working on a business problem or an issue or a program, and then that builds your profile. And technology projects are less than 20% technology. More than 80% is people and change. Technology normally will take care of itself. It's the people and the change management side of things.
The change management, and that's what I often hear as well from other leaders we speak to. But kind of want to talk about you as a digital shaper. I know that's often what you're called. You've emphasised the importance of taking digital strategy from vision to delivery as well before. Now, I'd love to know if you can recall a specific instance or time where you faced doubt or a little bit of skepticism from others about your vision.
I think, there's examples of this on every program. When we say people are skeptic, they're not skeptic in a negative sense. They're skeptic in the sense, what's in it for me? Or for their department or for their area. They're skeptic because they don't understand. Technology can be sometimes appears as very shiny and the newest thing, but how is it going to deliver for the customers? How is it going to make
business?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. How is it going to make a business process easier, for example, or what is it going to do for us employees or for our suppliers. That articulation if is also the role, in my view, of the technology leaders. Right? And you become a good technology leader if you are able to marry the benefit of technology in the business language and speak. Then that starts to create value. Then that also comes back to these are not single events. Again, you need to have that long-term relationships to be able to take others on a journey for a period of time. You cannot just stand in front of 400, 500 people and say, this is what we're doing. Well, sometimes it's required. You need to say, this is the North Star. But then teams are still looking for you to show a little bit of a path, because we know from change management, 80% of the people are going to be sitting on the fence. It takes a degree of time and effort, relationships, to be able to articulate that story.
And to get that buy-in as well.
To get that buy-in. And before I kind of give an example, I think the other angle is credibility. So when people are saying, okay, I get the change in a visual and an abstract sense, or on a piece of paper, we can say, yes, we're going to increase sales by X, or we're going to increase our customer experience score by Y. That's still on a piece of paper. There's still words. Some life has to be put into those words, right? So I sometimes say you got to kind of put blood and bones into these words so people start to feel. And that comes through celebrating some small wins and also showing that progression. And in a technology or innovation language, we can call it as proof of concepts, or try a minimum viable product. But it needs to show that value that people can touch, feel, see.
It's tangible.
It's tangible. And then as leaders, we need to be open for feedback. I think that's another flaw, that we put a position and a hard position and we say this is the North Star, and then we're not willing to look at the feedback that's coming our way. And if we don't accept feedback, it does, sorry, I should say it other way around. If we accept feedback, it does two things. One, it improves the solution, and more importantly, it gets the buy-in from the team members who are actually giving that feedback, so they're coming on that journey. So we've had, in terms of examples, in my career within BlueScope, we've had a situation this was around 8 years ago. The organization, and this public knowledge, was going through quite a tough time. And at the same time, we wanted to launch a cloud-based employee engagement tool, right? So people can comment, show what they're working on, do likes. So just like Facebook, for example, right? And I could see internal resistance in that skeptic sense to say, here on the left-hand side, we're fighting for our survival. And on the right-hand side, we want to implement an employee engagement tool, right? And in terms of priorities and what it might do.
You could see people questioning it. I'm sure the timing of it all.
Correct, right? And the way to do was, one, to get an executive buy-in first in terms of the motivated employees, the art and science of sharing good news stories, because there was a lot of gloominess, right? And what that can do, the availability of a platform where we can share some of the knowledge for the long. So that original initial story, once it's told at an executive level, the next thing is, okay, you can communicate that out to your thousands of team members, but then you need to do some small wins. So we started with a pilot for 100 people. So, okay, don't worry, 100 people, let's just try. The 100 thing organically became 800 within the 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so in many ways, people bought into the journey when they could experiment, right? themselves. And I mean, it helped that what we were implementing was a commercial version of Facebook itself. So it's called Workplace.
It's something positive as well, I think.
It's a positive as well.
As you said, at a gloomy time.
Correct.
Something positive for the employees to actually engage in.
Correct. And something that worked, something that we were implemented to do quickly, because it got to 800. To be able to scale it to Australia wasn't that bad, because your 800 of the key influencers in the business are already onto it, so that organic growth happened quickly, and then we were able to kind of get it to globe. Yeah, so we were able to get it into New Zealand, into US, into our Asian business. So I think that was one story where you can say we got to accept a certain degree of concern. I think that is normal. You got to be able to bring people on a journey, and for me, the best way to bring people on a journey is through delivery. You got to be able to show some concrete results for that buy-in to happen, and then the scalability comes with it, because people make it happen themselves. You're not the one doing it. Right?
Yeah, I think what I like about that story as well is that you had the initial test or trial of the 100 employees, but because the rest of it wasn't forced on the other employees, you had this buy-in because it was almost voluntary. It was like, oh, let's just give this a go. So they felt like they were empowered to make that decision.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? And and now it is one of most powerful, if I can say, platform available for our employees to share stories and communicate widely.
Fantastic. And you talked about the beauty of having and the importance of having relationships, long-term relationships, and having a coffee with someone. But for example, we can't always do that when we're working in the hybrid kind of work environment. And I'm sure this platform, though, helps with connecting people globally in still ways that maybe we're lacking in person.
Absolutely. It starts the initial connection, right? Sometimes in a large organization, it is quite common for us, the left hand, to not know what right hand is doing. It is quite common in large organizations to not know what a US business is doing, and we could be doing exactly the same thing and struggling on exactly the same problem that some other part of our business has already solved, right? So that platform gives visibility on that. Platform also gives a way for small groups to connect with each other and share. I think the platform also gives some backing to the art of failure in a positive sense, that you can fail but still share your learning, because a failure is an investment in a future success, right? That we're not going there. So we do see examples of that.
Yeah, I love that you call it the art of failure as well, because it really is important that we don't disregard failures. It's so important that we take note of them and learn from our failures as well. And failures are important, right?
Absolutely, right. So I guess Micah is an example of taking risks and failing many times before something succeeds. One of my friends in industry, Gus Belbertine, is good, very popular speaker. He talks about exploring a lot, and then figuring out which one you need to exploit. So you might be on a particular topic, you might be exploring 50 things before you decide there's going to be now one that makes sense that I need to be able to exploit. But you can't find that one until you explore the 50 first. So whether we talk about that in terms of exploring or exploring and failing, or saying taking risk and it didn't pan out. Absolutely, I think without that in our careers and in business, that return factor will always be ordinary if we are not practicing the art of failure.
Certainly. Now, I want to talk a little bit about your current role as well. It's actually got quite an impressive name. It's Head of Technology Strategy and Transformation, as we said, but you're also the CTO.
Yes.
But talk us through what it actually means to be the Head of Technology Strategy, but also transformation as well. What's the difference between a traditional CTO and this really fancy title?
No, thank you, Mary. That's a great question. So this is a bit a unique role in industry. Normally, you will have a Chief Technology Officer role, which is looking after strategy and architecture predominantly. So my role has strategy and architecture. Initial forays into digital. So that's where we are experimenting with new technologies and trying to find what is fit for our business. And the final piece, which is actually quite a large piece, is around transformations. And in my case, they're predominantly large ERP programs, typically in multi-million-dollar size, teams of hundreds. And that, I think, is logical for me because the role before I came to this role was running a large ERP program myself and delivering that program for the business. So that lived experience and then that ability to combine the strategy side of it. Strategy, again, looks ahead and builds a 3, 4, 5, 7-year vision, and we've just done a 7-year vision. But again, to some of our previous discussion that we were just having, it's you need to be able to show the credibility through delivery to say we're saying this because we've done one of this already. So I've got 2 running in parallel right now that I govern and steer. And then as part of my, the strategy and the typical CTO role, I am building the roadmap for the next 7 that need to follow. So I think it gives me that sweet spot to come to the role with the credibility of having delivered change.
Yes.
And then that credibility of being a technology leader who understands. To also then marry that up with the dynamic demands of our business right now and say this is the most pragmatic way to go, and to do it in a step-by-step sense. Right? Again, I can give a vision, but it needs to be then dissected step by step to show progress. So that's my role.
Yeah, fantastic. And you mentioned the 7-year journey that you usually look at building. 7 years is it's not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but 7 years, a lot can change in technology in that time frame. I mean, even in the last 7 years, we've seen a lot of advancement. How do you plan for 7 years ahead when so much is rapidly changing in the technology sector?
Yeah, great question, Mary. This is, I think this is the hardest question for every technology officer, technology team. I shouldn't even say technology team, for any executive team. This is the biggest question. The first challenge for enterprise business is very few businesses are digital natives. It's a very different ball game when you are an existing enterprise. So it's not a greenfields opportunity, it's brownfields. And the example I give is you have a marathon runner running and you need to perform heart surgery on it while that person is running. You do not have the luxury of giving that patient an anesthesia and taking it to an operation theater and then doing the surgery and then waiting for a few months in an ICU recovery. That does not happen. Business has to implement change while you are running business. Right?
Business as usual.
Absolutely. And so when we have got a plan, we are trying to focus our business attention that there's a lot of work we need to do in our core engine room. Right? Our engine room can be, it's true for every organization, can be old, can be dated, is using old technologies, and in many ways, the complexities of the business is so that it takes the business IP is sitting in those systems or applications. It's not easy to do a shift in just 6 months. At the same time, as you said, the pace of technology is so fast. Business, employees, customers don't want to wait 7 years for a change to come. At the same time, you got 100 plus new emerging technologies every day. You cannot go and experiment in every space. What is the value? How do you make sure that something is fit for purpose for BlueScope or any other organization? And how do you, more importantly, make sure that it's scalable? It's very common right now in today's environment for a technology to be successful in a very small proof of concept. Organizations struggle to then scale that up, and also the angle of how do you make it commercially palatable. So those are absolutely the challenges. How we do it is first understanding the core business priorities. So everything has to come back to the business strategy and the focus and where the business is heading. And then typically it is a mixture of what needs to be overhauled in terms of our engine room, but at the same time, what pain relief needs to be given at the outer edges. And I think that's where some of the digital and new emerging technologies come. But you have to be very focused. You cannot just play in every technologies. You got to come back to the question of what is the value we're delivering, and if the value that we're delivering means we need to alleviate customer pain or employee efficiency, and that means we're going to bring in another new technology to add to our already complex ecosystem, well, then you do that with eyes wide open because it's delivering some tangible benefit, while at the same time trying to keep the focus on your engine room overhaul, right? And when you're trying to do the engine room overhaul, that's again some of the modern technologies can come in to say, we're not just going to upgrade from A to B. Moving from A to B now gives us options. Do we go to A to B, or do we go to A to C, or do we kill a few things that we've been doing? It gives you an opportunity to challenge the way of doing business. So it gives you those opportunities, because then you need that backing of the business to think hard in a long-term sense to be able to transform. So it's a balance of two sides,
And I'm sure those 7-year plans as well are always being adapted and changed depending on the business landscape.
Absolutely.
And we spoke briefly, you mentioned emerging technologies, and obviously the big one that everyone's talking about is AI in some form. There's Gen AI and then other forms of AI as well. I mean, what's your thoughts around the adoption of AI, maybe in your role, but also just in the industry and the market as a whole? Do you think there should be a high appetite, or do you think maybe we should have a bit more of a cautious approach to adopting AI?
Yeah, I think my response is going to be a little bit more complex than those.
Got plenty of time.
those two kind of positions. I think my first point would be AI and Gen AI in that very broad sense. These are game-changing technologies or positions in our world. So I think that's given. I look at them as mass technologies. So when you have a mass technology or a mass shift in the world, they're great equalizers. So your ability to use that technology and my ability to use that technology versus anybody else's ability to use is quite similar. It's quite level playing field. So they're mass equalizers in that sense. The challenge then becomes for any particular organization to extract greater than average outcome out of that technology is the challenge. Yeah, because if I were to extract the same level of outcome that any other competitor of mine is doing, then we are still on the same level playing field. It's just a shift in terms of the technology base for everyone. So that would be one. So I think organizations are now trying to see how do we extract value. I think you can already see that, when ChatGPT and things came in a year ago, there's a lot of hype. The hype still is there, but people are starting to now say, okay, what does this actually mean?
Cutting through that hype.
Cutting through the hype. And so then it's no different from any other technology. The challenge for organizations are to find use cases. So in our space, we have use cases in terms of employee efficiency, and that could be, for example, we know Microsoft has Copilot technologies. We are looking into them. There are, whether we like it or not, any software major platform is going to by default implement these technologies. So that is happening. If we're using any of these communication apps, you can see that they're starting to integrate that. So that's, again, by default, mass equalization is going to happen. Our challenge for organizations is around security as the main one, control over information, and I guess to a lesser degree now, what that information can turn into, right? So the information can turn into decisions, but at what level, at what point it turns into decisions that somebody or some system itself is making without any human
element to it.
So is the challenge. But that's I think the concern side of it will be solved, and a lot of effort is being put into that. I think the challenge probably still is to find the positive use of those technologies. It's such a powerful platform. Organizations such as ours have challenges in health and safety. We transport coils of steel. Each coil of steel is 3 tons, and there's a lot of effort that goes into to make sure we secure it properly, we transport it properly. There's no hazards to it. I think there's use cases for technologies in that space. There are use cases for technologies in some of the early and most positive use cases are for our technical developer teams. Instead of writing 20 lines of code themselves, if 18 can be written for them,
yes,
and they can do the last 2 and then sense check the output, I think that is a very clear value add. And I think that space is ahead of anybody else in terms of exploiting that. So I think, potentials are huge. The challenge is for every organization to find that competitive advantage by using it.
They were the 2 words I had in my head when you were talking.
And to do it in a secure and a safe way. The negative side of things, I think I would personally, and this is my personal thought, I think humans in general will solve the problem, and most of the time we solve the problem for the betterment of humankind. So I think those broader concerns, humankind will tackle them. It's finding the right use cases, and
I think there's obviously that ethical piece, but there's also the policies and the regulation that we're working on here in Australia as well. So we're getting there. We're not as close as the Europe is, but I think it's really important to understand that we've got to play a part in creating the governance around the ethics of AI as well.
Yeah.
Now, let's change the tune a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about your role and some of your previous roles as well. You've led operational permanent teams of more than 150 members. I mean, what personal values or leadership principles do you prioritise to ensure your team feels empowered and motivated as well? I think we briefly spoke about that, but talk us through just leadership, leadership there.
Yeah, I think the first thing is I need to be clear in terms of what I stand for. and the career journey and my own experiences continue to push me towards seeking that uncomfortable space. Yeah? So that's my own perspective to anything, and I seek the uncomfortable so I can grow, and I can grow in the sense of a very broader sense. I can grow, and my teams can grow, my business can grow in a personal and professional sense, and to break down certain glass ceilings, and again in a very broader sense of we all ultimately have a role or a job because we are there to solve a problem. And to me, that is the glass ceiling, right? And people say, I cannot solve the problem. They're not saying the problem cannot be solved. People are saying, I don't know how to solve this problem or how to go about solving this problem. That's the underlying theme. So if that's my base principle. In terms of large teams, some principles, again, I like to be net giver on a broader length of a relationship. So that comes back to coffees. I think my business people who know me will say Jag has an unlimited coffee budget. So that is very important to me.
I have to tell my boss that
yes,
as well.
There you go. The shaping of the solutions, and through shaping of the solutions and through your connections, you build again that credibility. And then I believe when you do that consistency, there is that subculture of the team that gives you the discretionary effort when the times are tough. And that's my broader principle in terms of how I operate. And that has led me to successfully lead large teams.
Fantastic. Now, as a tech leader as well, I'd love to know about your view of technology use in your personal life and how maybe being a leader in the tech world has led to shaping your view of technology personally. We mentioned social media, but the use of phones and how, has it helped you, I guess, so, with your own tech governance in your personal life?
Absolutely. I think, again, it's two sides of the coin, but I'd say net positive, right? Net positive by a large degree. And I can relate for a few examples. I talked about me coming to Australia. As an international student, I think I was earning something like $300 a month, right? And I remember $65 or $70 were the monthly train ticket in Melbourne, right, at that point. So you're left with $230, right, to manage your month. Calls to India at that point was $1.50 a minute.
Oh, wow.
From Telstra booths, or if you had phone cards. Well, 20 years or 24 years forward, we can make unlimited video calls free, right?
With a Wi-Fi connection.
With the Wi-Fi connections, yeah. Sending money to India or getting money from India used to be a pain. It would be 15 days plus, and you would be, sweating of whether the money is actually going to land or it's going to be lost, right? I have recently transferred money, and within 20 minutes it has landed, right? Yeah. So that payment systems.
It's so much safer as well and secure. You're not wondering if it's going to land or not in the other bank account.
Absolutely, right. So I think the telecommunication side of the technology in a very broad sense, and the communication side of it has been the greatest levelers across the world. I was traveling last year, including to India and Thailand, and I could see the pace of payment and digital money and the adoption of those technologies is actually, I would say, 10 times faster than what we're doing in Australia right now.
Wow.
Right? A street vendor who otherwise may not be able to communicate in English, but has a QR code in front of whatever, small sack of vegetables or things that he or she is selling, but has the trust, more importantly, in the system that whoever is buying a little, 2 mangoes or 3 avocados or whatever they're buying the money is actually getting transferred from Medi to I think that is a net positive, and almost a game changer way of lifting the profile of those people, and also giving them the platform to get rid of some of the inefficient bureaucracy and middlemen and other systems. So I think we cannot appreciate what technology is doing in those spaces. I was thinking, you and I have met first time today, face to face. We can have a chat and decide to be business partners. And I reckon within 4 hours, we can have a virtual product or a website, and we can put it out in front of millions. Whether somebody buys it or not is a different question.
It's a different story.
But that is what technology is allowing you and I to do.
Certainly, we could have sat here for 45 minutes and spoken about a new product and maybe had it ready to go by the end of the day.
Absolutely right. And then
a prototype ready to go.
So I think it cannot be underestimated there. Yes, there's a flip side. We're spending a lot more time on technology. The social aspects of it are pretty serious. The social isolation side of part is very serious. I think it's an underlying, contributor to the broader physical and mental health space. And again, I would probably trust the ingenuity of the human brain to solve that problem at some point too, but I think it's net positive.
I think humans never cease to amaze me though with what we can discover and what we can achieve, which is pretty amazing. And now, look, I've got one last question for you before we start finishing up, because we're slowly running out of time. And I told you this, it flies by. Just for someone that's working their way up the ranks as a tech leader, and someone that might have started in an unusual spot, they might have started as a civil engineer, or they might have started in the Officeworks, a retail store. What advice would you have for them moving their way through their career, and say they might have the goal to become a CTO as well? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that at a very base level, I'll come back to accept all offers. When you think something is not happening, try to broaden your horizon and just grab whatever is happening at that point for you, right? Wherever that opportunity is, because that builds your learning. And more importantly, I think that builds the resilience, right? So if I look back, one of the consistent feedbacks I will get from my teams and my peers and my leaders in doing 360s is the resilience side of things, and that calmness, and not give up. And I kind of reflect, why am I like that? Because you go through some of those hard times, and if you don't build your credit in the bank in the sense of your resilience and willpower, perhaps. I think that's how what I would say is accept all offers, treat everything as an experience, take risks. Your ability to take risks reduces as you grow up, but take that early in your career, and I think then that helps you in terms of building connections. That helps you to talk in the sense of business and in sense of what it means for the other person, not in technology, I guess. And then, as they say, if you have a good product to sell, ultimately people will buy it and finance will take care of it. So I think the roles and the titles and that will come in time. For some it comes quicker, for others it takes a bit more time, but it'll come. I think it's important to just stay on that journey.
You definitely can't underestimate a thick skin.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely cannot underestimate
that. Not at all. Well, thank you, Jagdeep, for joining us on the podcast. We really appreciate time today.
Thank you, Maddie. Thank you for giving me a platform to talk.